All right, guys, so we're over here at the bench. Now, if you guys want to upgrade your pump, you can do this relatively inexpensively. Is it the best upgrade? I don't believe so, but you can do whatever you want. So I have this low mile pump that I'm going to use because I don't have, this is a new one, but it's already sold to somebody. So I can't use that one. But this one was a low mileage pump. It's the exact same pump. Now I know somebody's going to ask, this is a big bore pump, and I can't remember what the part number was. I'll put a link in the description if I can find it. Sometimes they're in stock, sometimes they're not. But also too, I bought a pump, or I didn't buy, a friend of mine bought a pump, and it was, I can't remember what it was actually a Carter pump. Yeah, it was a Carter pump brand, Carter brand, and it was a big bore pump just for a Dodge truck. So, you know, sometimes you get the big bore, sometimes you don't. So it just depends on what you're doing, how much power you want to make. Because really, for the most part, if you're staying around 300 horsepower, it really doesn't make much difference. It doesn't hurt, don't get me wrong. But, so this is what the pump looks like when it's all I guess I shouldn't say all together because I got this one ripped apart too. But anyways, so usually this is going to be threaded in here, right? Because this is your suction line in. Actually, usually it goes to your intake heater. So if you had an intake heater, it would be like this in between there, right? Make sense? I personally throw those away. You just need the spacer off of it. I already cut in earlier in the video, you've seen that. So this is what the plunger looks like. The actual piston, I should say, not the plunger. This is what the piston looks like. Now, this one actually had a shim in it. I'm going to take the shim out because I don't want the shim in there. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. So we're going to slide this back in because I had this apart already just for ease of showing in the video. This is the heavy duty spring that we're using. I have shown a video on doing this before, so I'm not going to get super in depth into it. This is just a heavier duty spring to put inside there. And yeah, we're not going to put that in there because it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't touch it anyway. Something I did want to note though, if you're doing this on the truck, you're going to put this heavy duty spring in, you need to make sure that the cam lobe is at the bottom of its stroke. If you don't, you'll have a really hard time putting it together. They're not really too hard to put together when they're like this. They're still not a good time though. It's actually even harder with that fitting on there. Because the fitting is right in the way of where I want my hand to go. Let me put it. Oop. Usually this isn't that bad to do, but they are, don't get me wrong, it's not the easiest thing to do. When it's in the truck, I find it not that bad, myself personally. Because you actually have something to shove off of. There we go. Because usually how I do it is I usually just put a ratchet, like a socket and a ratchet, and then just turn the ratchet. But obviously, this being like that, we can't do that. So, that's fine. Not a huge deal. Let's talk quick. Now, I did do it in the video, but it was in time lapse, so you guys probably didn't see it. So, that being said, overflow valve. These things are pretty simple inside. It's an unthreading style. There's just a check ball inside there. Then you have your spring. What you want to do is just spread your spring out a little bit, which gives it a little bit more tension. Now, it looks like somebody might have been into this one before because it's got a bunch of shim on it. But I don't know what it would have been set at. I want all of it. We've already done the other one, so it's not the end of the world here. But if you want to jack up the pressure a little bit more, if you take a pen, You have to sacrifice your pen though. And you take the pen spring, cut it in half. About 2/3 of the pens around here don't work right because I've stole the guts out of them. See, doesn't work anymore. Usually I end up putting a piece of paper in them, but if you take that and you spread it out a little bit and you drop it down inside the middle of that, it'll add some pressure to it. And just screw that back together. And it's literally that easy to do that. So most of the time you can actually do it without taking it out. It just depends on which cylinder head you have. Some cylinder heads will allow you to, some won't. So just take that into account. So hopefully that helps you guys out with that. I'm trying to do everything on this engine in videos so you don't have to jump to other videos. I realize there might be a couple things that you have to jump to a different video, but I'm just trying to quickly do everything in every video so you can go from start to finish in this series and do everything that I've done to get what I've done. So, okay, I'm gonna go back over to the engine, talk just briefly, and then we're gonna put the pump on, and then I'll probably put it in time lapse and we'll put the pump on. And then we'll put the exhaust manifold on. We'll do that in time lapse because I don't imagine you guys really, it's pretty simple to put it on. All right, so that's the spacer I cut the pieces off of. I put some high tack on these because I like using high tack on this stuff. As I do that, and I stick this to that. I don't know where these gaskets came from, but they look okay. Reasonable. These are those bolts that I tried to put in the intake, which were the wrong ones. These are supposed to be for this. This pump I don't think will be staying on, but that's okay. We will use it for now. Well, I shouldn't say that. I will leave it on there as long as it's up to the task of doing the job for what we're doing. So there again, no truck in the way. This is relatively easy. And I was talking about this lobe in here, right? Actually, that's something you really should do is you want to put a dab, especially when you're changing a pump or on an engine that's just been apart and everything's dry. You don't want that surface to be dry, like on the end here, because you can screw that up. And you don't want to do that. So, actually, there actually probably, because I put that camshaft in there, there would be a little tiny bit of stuff on there. But we want to make sure that there's something on the end of that, so when it starts rolling, we aren't screwing it up, because it'll chew. It will. You can chew the end of the lobe of the camshaft up. Not very often do you see it, but you can do it. I have seen it. So. See, pretty easy, right? Pretty simple, right? Now, can be difficult if the lobe is up all the way, but if the lobe's not up all the way and you use the right bolts, it goes together quite simply. So I think now what I'm gonna do is I'll probably do this in time lapse because there again, it's not really that big a deal. I'm gonna put this line, goes from here to here, put this banjo fitting in just so that is done. We don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm gonna take a quick look, see if I can scavenge for that quick. We're gonna put the exhaust manifold on. We're gonna put the new turbo on because I need to get fitted for the new oil line and the drain tube, make sure all that's going to work, which you should be able to use the factory one because it's going to be in a factory location and it's basically a factory style turbocharger. So all of that will line up. So I'm going to throw this in time lapse and we'll get after it here. So we're going to do an unboxing of an exhaust manifold, a BD exhaust manifold. Now, this exhaust manifold is for a 24 valve. That is a 12 valve. Don't worry about that. Just disregard that this is for a 24 valve and that's a 12 valve, okay? But I just figured I'd do a little unboxing video. Obviously, I've already had it open. So it comes with your exhaust manifold. And these are reasonable exhaust manifolds. I would rather a Steed, to be totally honest with you, but I can't get one, so that answers that question. So, comes with some nuts, your install package, cardboard, more cardboard to get rid of. So, I wish these things came with hardware for all of it, but they do not. So, that is one thing. No, the Steed doesn't either. So anyways, being this, so here's your, that is the application. So the one part number off, but that's okay. For where we're going, it's going to be fine. But we are going to put the studs in. But these are relatively decent pieces. I don't know, like I said, so this is a 3-piece design. I myself personally like the Steed better, but I can't get one. And I'm not waiting. I have a bunch on order, but I'm not waiting anymore. So something that I do, I don't know if they recommend to do it or not. I do it anyway. Is I put a little bit of anti-seize in between these flanges. I don't know if they recommend to do it. I can be totally honest with you. I have never read the instructions. But I know that I have seen them rusted up and leak. And every time I've ever done this, now granted, I'm getting a bunch of that in there, but that's okay. It'll go through the turbo just fine. You won't hurt the turbo. So, slide that back together. Something else that didn't, One thing that the Steeds do is they do come with manifold gaskets. This does not. So, anyways, so you really don't have to, but we'll just give her a little tiny bit because we don't want it to rust. Now you don't have to do this. All I find that doing this does is it keeps the rust from building up underneath, which is usually what screws the surface up, is all I found. So you can do it if you want. Have to, no. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw you guys back in a time lapse because you don't need to watch me wander around and do this. we're just going to put the exhaust manifold on, gaskets, bolts. I am going to anti-seize the bolts as well. You'll be able to see me in time lapse doing it. And we'll put this thing all together. So we got a bunch more done on this old girl today. I guess maybe I should address the elephant in the room, because some guys are going to ask. Yes, you can put a 24 valve manifold on a 12 valve. Should you do it? That's a debated thing. Yes, there probably is going to be a little bit of turbulence because the ports aren't the same. But the reason, just so that you guys understand the reason, I'm not made of money, for one. But the reason that I did that is this manifold, I don't believe, is going to be staying on this setup. And the reason that I used the 24 valve manifold, one, I had it, and well, it was a return actually, because we got the wrong manifold, but I'm going to use that in a later build that will be a 24 valve. And I needed the manifold, so I figured, well, instead of buying a 12 valve manifold and then a 24 valve manifold in the very short period of time, we might as well just buy a 24 valve manifold. It will work just fine, won't be a problem. I've done it lots of times, so you don't need to get your panties in a wad. So basically we did a valve set. We did this stuff, hooked up the fuel lines, put a fuel pump on her. This is, it's a Super 9 from Savage Fab. So it's a 67 rear and a 60 mil front. Should work fantabulous for this setup. I would say, if realistically, I think this truck is going to end up with compounds back on it again, because I'm like that. I really like compounds, and I'd really like to try this turbo in a compound setup. So doing like an S475 over this, under this, I should say, maybe beside it, whatever, you know what I'm saying. Maybe will be something that will happen in a short period of time, but we'll see how it goes, because we're doing this as a tow rig, right? So if we're at that, let's say 350, 400 horse mark, and it's running too hot and we need to pull EGTs out of it, we're going to put another turbo on it, because, well, I'm like that. So I think that's going to do everything on this video. And remember, it's not rocket science.